High above the world, where clouds embrace the ancient stone, a sacred silence resides, far away from the restless noise of our modern digital existence. Have you ever wondered why you feel utterly exhausted before you even begin? Perhaps you are leaking the very energy required for your soul's true ascent. In an era where we are told to document every step of our journey, we have forgotten the profound power that lies in the art of vanishing. Else the Zen Master knows a secret that the world has forgotten. True greatness is not announced by trumpets, but nurtured in the depths of total humility. There exists a rare flower called the Yu Min, a blossom that refuses to reveal its beauty under the harsh, judging glare of the midday sun. The paradox of our digital age is simple. The more we boast about our grand goals, the less likely we are to ever actually achieve them. To grow, the seed must first be buried. It must endure the darkness, away from the prying eyes of those who only seek the final result. Why do the most successful people choose to disappear? Why do they seek the shadows before they step into the light that defines their legacy forever? Listen closely to the sound of the wind, for it carries the wisdom of the greats, who understood that silence is the ultimate forge of genius. The disciple, filled with youthful pride, began his journey by telling everyone in the village about the miraculous flower he intended to plant and grow. He basked in their early applause, feeling the warmth of recognition before a single seed had even touched the earth or tasted the mountain water. Psychology calls this the identity claim. When we receive praise for our intentions, our brain feels a false sense of accomplishment that stalls our progress. Every time he shared his vision, he felt a surge of dopamine. But with every word spoken, his actual drive to do the work slowly ebbed away. As soon as the first tiny leaf appeared, he invited the crowd to witness his success, desperate to validate his status as a master gardener. But the plant was fragile. Exposed to the harsh light of public expectation too early, the delicate life within began to shrivel and die before him. The praise he once craved now felt like a heavy burden. He realized that the opinions of others were a toxic fertilizer for his true potential. Every compliment was a hole in his spirit, but a leak through which his creative energy escaped, leaving him hollow and unable to complete his mission. He had traded the reality of growth for the illusion of success. He had sought the light of the sun before strengthening his roots in darkness. This is the curse of early recognition. It satisfies the ego but starves the soul, killing the hunger that is necessary for achieving greatness in life. The master approached him, not with a reprimand, but with a simple lesson written in the language of the dying plant and the cooling air. "You gave your energy to the wind," the master whispered. "You let the world consume the heat that should have stayed within the sacred soil. To be great, you must learn to contain your fire. You must learn to work in the shadows where the prying eyes of men cannot reach. The world demands to see, but the universe demands you be." And there is a fundamental difference between performing a task and truly becoming your work. The lesson was clear. Protect your seeds from the sun until they are strong enough to withstand the heat of the world's inevitable and harsh judgment. He realized that the loudest people in the room are often the ones with the least to show, for their power is spent on noise. "I will disappear," he promised himself, "and I will enter the silence, and I will not return until the work has finally spoken for its own self." The master led him into the Thian Fong, a room where the only light came from a single candle, symbolizing the solitary path of the wise. To disappear is not to hide, the master explained. It is to withdraw your energy from the trivial so you can focus it on the monumental. The greatest minds throughout history, the painters, the inventors, the philosophers, all shared a common habit. They spent vast amounts of time in total isolation. They understood that the darkness of the womb is where life begins. It is a place of protection, of gathering strength before the birth of greatness. Think of the seed. It does not grow by reaching for the sky immediately. It spends its first days digging deeper into the cold, silent soil. The silence of the mountain is not empty. It is heavy with the weight of centuries of internal transformation that we can barely begin to comprehend. When your mind is quiet, you become a mirror. When your life is private, you become a reservoir of power that the world cannot easily drain. He began to learn that every time he resisted the urge to tell someone his plans, his internal resolve grew stronger, like a coiled spring ready. This is internal energy. It is the fuel for the long haul. It is the stamina required to turn a fleeting vision into a tangible reality. Society fears the silent man because they cannot influence him. They cannot use their praise or their criticism to steer his ship off his course. By disappearing, you are essentially building a pressure cooker for your talent. You are allowing the heat to transform the raw materials into something rare. Growth happens in the dark. The roots extend, the structure hardens, and the foundation is laid far beneath the surface of what people can see. He learned to build walls, not to keep people out of his heart, but to keep the sacredness of his work in a safe place. There is a profound dignity in working for the sake of the work itself, rather than for the applause that follows the finished product's grand reveal. The craftsman does not ask if the wood likes being carved. He simply carves until the shape hidden within the grain is finally brought to light. This is the monk mode of the mind. It is a state of deep neurological focus, where the brain can perform at its highest possible physiological level. He chose his own cave, and he chose to sever the invisible threads of social obligation that had been strangling his creative spirit for far too long. In the cave of his own making, he discovered that he was not lonely. He was, for the very first time in his life, truly present. The stars do not scream for attention, yet they are the most magnificent things we can ever hope to witness in our brief and mortal lives. Day after day, the disciple worked in absolute seclusion, and he tended to the new seed as if it were his own beating and vulnerable heart. He no longer sought the validation of the villagers. His only audience was the silence of the cave and the rhythm of his own breathing soul. He was like a caterpillar in a cocoon. To the outside world, he appeared stagnant, but inside, a radical and miraculous restructuring was occurring every day. Winter came, and with it, the ultimate test of his patience. The cold was bitter, but his internal fire kept the small room warm and alive. He learned to embrace the monk mode. He eliminated all frivolous interactions, all small talk, and all modern distractions that once cluttered his precious mind. True power is like a subterranean river. It flows deep and invisible, carving out canyons and mountains without ever making a sound to the world above. He used his isolation to study, to refine his skills, and to understand the deeper principles of his craft that he had ignored in his youth. The flower grew too. Its roots were now deep and anchored, capable of drawing nutrients from the very core of the mountain's ancient and rich heart. Time passed not in hours, but in growth. He had lost track of the days, but he had finally found the essence of his own purpose. He watched the seasons change through the mouth of the cave, a silent observer of the universe's grand and patient cycle of death and rebirth. Every small action became a meditation. Every movement was deliberate. Yet he was no longer rushing toward a destination. He had become the journey itself. The master watched from a distance, knowing that the boy who once craved the village's applause had finally died, and a man was being born. The silence was no longer empty. It was filled with the music of his own work, the harmony of a life lived in perfect alignment with truth. He had achieved the most difficult task of all. He had learned to be enough for himself. The world's gaze was no longer a requirement for him. The transformation was nearly complete. The energy that had been gathered in the darkness was now ready to take a form that would endure forever. The bud was thick and heavy with potential. It held within it the scent of 1,000 flowers and the strength of 100 winters cold. He did not feel the need to call the villagers. He did not feel the need to prove anything to anyone. He was simply ready to witness. The dawn of his greatness was not a sudden explosion of fame, but a quiet, inevitable blooming of everything he had cultivated in the deep silence. He stood at the threshold of a new life, a life where his work would speak with a voice louder than any shout he could ever produce. And then, in the sacred hours before the world awoke, the flower bloomed. It unfolded with a grace that defied description, a masterpiece of natural design. The fragrance was subtle, yet profound, filling the small cave and drifting out into the mountain air like a silent prayer of accomplishment and peace. He sat in the presence of his creation, not as a master, but as a witness to the miracle that happens when we finally get out of. Success, true success, is like this flower. It does not need a megaphone. It does not need to be marketed. Its beauty is its own justification. The master entered and sat beside him. No words were exchanged. Yet, for at this level of achievement, words are merely a clumsy distraction from the truth. He had become the flower. He had become the silence. He had become the greatness he once sought to possess through the empty words of others. The world below continued its noisy dance, but the disciple was now a part of something much larger, something that the valley could never truly understand. Now, the question remains for you. In this world of constant noise and empty visibility, what is the one dream you will choose to protect? What goal are you willing to nurture in the darkness, away from the likes, the comments, and the shallow praise of those who do not know? Commit to your silence. Let your results be the only noise you ever make. Disappear into your work, and let greatness find you in the quiet. Leave a sign of your silent commitment below, then go. Vanish into your craft. And we will see you when your flower finally decides to bloom.